With that being said, we would love to welcome up Miss Ronelle Swaggerty to share about the wonderful things happening at New Beginnings.
Sure. You can do it. Let me test it. Okay.
See if you can do it.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Hello. Just give me a second here. I have a handout that I'm going to share with you, which we will look at as I get further in my presentation. Sarah, there you are. Okay. So New Beginnings Family Academy is a 14-year-old public charter school here in Bridgeport. I came on board when New Beginnings was in the beginning of its second academic year, so almost the very beginning. We're in our second year of our theory of change. We went through this wonderful process where after 12 years in the business, we decided to get to know ourselves and understand why we were doing what we were doing. Tauck had everything to do with that process. It was a really healthy one, and we came up with a new mission, which is on the screen, which our children know by heart and understand what it means. And we also make sure that we discuss it with them, so that they understand what academic success and character, why it matters. When we went through our theory of change process, we decided that we wanted to teach with poverty in mind, right? We needed to understand our children and their needs, and I'm gonna take this out so I can make sure I don't miss anything. We wanted to teach with poverty in mind, understanding our children and their needs, and focusing on their social, emotional development so that we could inoculate them against the streets, which are a huge challenge to our population, by providing a rigorous education that ensures academic success and builds character. And we wanted to do this while supporting our families, right? I can't see that. Okay, so this is just a little bit about who we are and who we serve. Most of our children are from the area. Most of them live right in Bridgeport. Most of them qualify for free and reduced price lunch, which is a proxy for poverty. Many are raised by their single parents, all except that one next to the little boy who isn't African American. That's mine. He attends New Beginnings as well. So, let me see. His birthday is tomorrow. I had to get him home tonight after school because there's pros and cons to having him at the school. Having him at the school definitely has its advantages, but when you have events such as tonight, having to get him home is a huge disadvantage. So New Beginnings, in our second year of our theory of change, decided that once we bought all of our new behavior management systems and put them in place, and once we trained our teachers and introduced them to the new way that we would operate, that we would, in our second year, be incredibly focused on outcomes and accountability. So what that looked like in real time was the reduction, or the elimination is probably a better word, of about 25% of our team members last summer, which was huge. And I know it was huge, and it wasn't an easy thing to do, but key to the success of any well-run organization is having the right people on the bus, right? And so we were really focused on doing that, and we got rid of a number of people, and we brought in a number of better people. Okay. Second to that is the training that we provide. We increased our professional development budget by 25%, which I think is on the next slide, and just made a concerted effort, a conscious effort to train people to know and be comfortable with the content, and our children. I mean, we went through a whole training this summer. We doubled our training days over the summer and just taught them what it meant to work with children who are poor and what poverty actually does to the brain. And there's a whole science behind it. We had Harvard come out and help us with that. And we just talked a lot about how critically important relationships are to being successful in the classroom. There's just no way, if you're serving an inner city population, that you can be successful if you don't take the time to understand who you're serving. So we did that. And then we really began to focus on data. We had been claiming to be a data-driven organization for a number of years, but we really became one as a result of our theory of change. What I passed around is evidence of how we're actually using data at New Beginnings Family Academy. So this year we set 11 goals, some academic and some organizational, and then we created our dashboard that links directly back to each of our goals, and we meet weekly to review progress toward goals, and that's what you see there. Okay? These next couple of slides are just bragging about how we're doing. Bragging with a caveat, because quite frankly, what you're seeing here are SBAC scores. The Smarter Balance is the replacement for the CMT, Connecticut Mastery Test, that we took for years. And quite frankly, those are just a one-time snapshot of how children are doing all year. They don't really inform instruction. They're important because they do show us how our kids are doing, how our school is doing. But there are a number of other assessments, some formative and summative, that are taking place so that we really can impact and inform instruction as opposed to just taking that one annual snapshot of children. But it's nice to be able to say that our first snapshot came out looking pretty darn good, right? Is that math? Yep. Okay, and so those are our math scores. We did really, really, really well in math, and we did not so well in ELA. We did really, really well in ELA and not so well in math. We still have a ways to go, but we still did outperform our Bridgeport counterparts. This is a slide where I talk about how we increased our PD budget and the role that Harvard and Tauck have played in that. When we applied for the Tauck grant, I thought it was going to kill me, literally. I mean, I would duck Morellis's calls. She was so thorough, it was sickening. And this is true. She would call and I'd say, oh no, what is she gonna ask now? And I'd have to have I'd have to scream and get my nerves out and then go and talk to Morellis because I knew whatever she was asking was important information. So this partnership, and I also knew that as a result of the way she went, it was not just Morellis, it was a team, but the way they went about due diligence for this process meant that we were gonna have a really meaningful partnership, and that's exactly what it's been. It's been incredibly meaningful. You know, in the olden days, you used to apply for a grant and take the money. You'd apply for the grant, you'd invite the potential funder in, they'd look at your really cute children in their really cute uniforms, give you money, and then not really hold you accountable. Well, those days are over, right? For those of us in the room who know. Nowadays, smart funders want partnerships. And that's what the Tauck Family Foundation has been, true partners that open door to other partners like Harvard, Child Trends, Nicola, who's not here, right? She's still on maternity leave. Just really, really wonderful relationships that have helped us to stay true to our mission, our new mission, which they help us write, and then, or pulled out of us rather, they didn't really help us write it. and then making sure that we stay on task. Are those bells ringing because that means time? No? Oh, okay. One of the things we worked on this summer was revamping our entire curriculum. We used to use a number of programs, basils and whatnot, to educate our children. Well, we decided our kids deserve a proprietary curriculum, and so that was something that the partnership helped us to do, pay for actually hiring a consultant who is helping us to write our curriculum. And so we're working a unit at a time until we get the full job done. And it's been going really well. A huge piece of the New Beginnings mission in partnership with families focuses on our relationship with our families. And that has taken a bunch of different shapes over the years. We used to mandate that parents volunteer their time, mandate that they volunteer their time a certain number of hours every single school year, and if they didn't satisfy those hours, then their children would be at risk of losing their seat in the lottery. And then I said, that feels like bullying. That sounds like bullying, that feels like bullying. What we really want are meaningful relationships with parents where they feel like true education advocates for their children, and they do what needs to be done, attend trainings, participate in workshops, communicate with us frequently, attend our open houses and parent conferences and all of that stuff so that they could really be partners in this mission that we're on. So many parents drop their children off in the morning and say, it's your job, and then pick them up in the afternoon or greet them at home off the school bus. We say, no, it's not just our job, it's all of our job. You have a role to play too, and we hold them to that in different ways. So these are just a couple of examples, a few examples of some ways that we get our parents involved. And again, we use our partnership with the Northeast Charter Schools Network to train them in advocacy work, because as a charter school, we're constantly begging for funds and equitable funding and all sorts of things. But we also involve them in everyday stuff like workshops on what's appropriate behavior between children, good touch, bad touch. We're actually about to hire a parent who's in the business who will come and be part of that leading a workshop on good touch, bad touch, because our pre-Kers and kindergartners were touching each other inappropriately, which is age appropriate, but we have to educate them and their families, and so that's what we'll do, okay? Oh, and a big thing this year, chronic absenteeism. You'd be surprised how hard of a nut that is to crack. Absenteeism, especially in the pre-K grade, because the state doesn't mandate pre-K attendance, is really challenging. And so we found ourselves in our first year of pre-K last year with a huge problem with absenteeism, especially in our younger grades. So this year we put together a toolkit, and we came up with all this wonderful praise and a full-fledged program. Every morning, every week we acknowledge weekly attendance. Every month we acknowledge school-wide attendance. We give awards for it. I mean, it's just the biggest deal on the planet at New Beginnings Family Academy just to come to school. And there was a recent article, I think in the Wall Street Journal this week, about how important it is to just for kids to show up in order to learn. And you would think, duh, but no, it really matters. So that's a huge area that we're working with our families on. What else? And then there's our social emotional piece, my favorite. So in the beginning of the school year, when we're training, we read it was one, now it's 2 books. The first was Teaching with Poverty in Mind, how poverty affects the brain and what teachers can do about it, something like that, by Eric Jensen. And his sequel is called Engaging Students with Poverty in Mind. And both of those books really speak to how the brain works and how it impacts, how poverty impacts it. And Harvard's Child Trend, our partners at Harvard helped us this summer to begin that training, just educating our teachers on some of those areas, which I'm sure they'll talk about, so I don't want to talk too much about it. They'll do a much better job. But working on that social emotional piece, not just for the students and understanding what the students' needs are, but also understanding the social emotional issues of the teachers. Like, can you really relate to these kids, or are you afraid of them? And if you are afraid of them, why? And is that something we can conquer, or do we need to fire you? That kind of stuff. And these are kind of courageous conversations that have to happen if you're going to be successful in a school in a city like Bridgeport, right? So all of this is data-driven. Positive praise aligned to our stretch principles. Our stretch principles are our core values. They stand for self-control, T is for thoughtful, responsible, empathetic, tenacious, conscientious, and hardworking. These are the core values that we look for in our children, and we develop them in our children along the way. And the goal, of course, is for these values to become intrinsic so that they can help them be successful long-term. We're looking for long-term outcomes at New Beginnings Family Academy, which is why I poo-pooed the grades, the scores. Long-term outcomes such as how many of our children are graduating New Beginnings and going into top-notch high schools, how many of our students are graduating high school, how many of our students are going from high school into great colleges, and from there, how many of them are landing wonderful career opportunities. So we're looking really long-term, even though we're only pre-K through 8, we vowed to really care about and monitor and help our children attain their long-term outcomes. Okay, what else? So we also, in addition to having a chronic absenteeism issue, we also found ourselves pre-theory of change and pre-Tauck partnership suspending way too many of our children just because we didn't know what else to do, right? They misbehave, send them home. That should be their mother and father's problem. Well, no. What we found is that wasn't helping. Suspension doesn't really answer any challenges. It doesn't correct behavior. It just gives you a day of reprieve. So we worked really hard and are working really hard not to suspend children. And the way that we're doing that is by using logical consequences. Now, let me give you a really concrete example of what a logical consequence might be. So I serve lunch duty. It's the bane of my existence, but I do it. Every day, 3rd and 4th grade lunch wave, I'm in there with all of the children. So one 3rd and 4th grade lunch wave, the children had literally levitated one of the tables. I mean, it was floating in the air. Just, why is the table floating in the air? Mrs. Swaggerty asked. And of course, they're kids, they couldn't tell me why. Well, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that, and and now they're hitting each other and calling each other names. So it got crazy. And the old Mrs. Swaggerty might have said, okay, you guys have to go home for a day. The new Mrs. Swaggerty and the New Beginnings Family Academy gave them a logical consequence. So when that same group of 3rd and 4th graders showed up to lunch the next day, guess what happened? There was no table. The table had disappeared. There were chairs in a circle where the table would have been. And they're so smart. They, some of them knelt down and ate from the chair, and some of them sat on their lap and put the food in their lap. They did what they had to do, but we haven't had that issue again. Logical consequences. And you can come up with logical consequences for just about anything the children do if you try hard enough. So as a result, our suspensions are way down. And so we look forward to continuing our work. We love the Tauck Family Foundation. Love you, love you. We appreciate you. And we appreciate all of the doors that you've opened, Harvard Graduate School being one. And we appreciate that you have gotten us focused on performance management and data and long-term outcomes. So, thank you.